Magnet television.
Magnet television.
Magnet television.
You're watching magnet television because what else are you going to do?
Howdy, y'all. This is Rhett Miller from the old 97's. We have a brand new record. It's called Twelfth. There's an elf in the middle of it. Twelfth. With favorite all-time song? That's tricky, right? Because there's a lot of great songs. There's God Only Knows by Brian Wilson. There's the entire side 2 of the Hunky Dory album by David Bowie. I could probably rattle off dozens of songs that I consider perfect songs, you know. For me, I always go back to Waterloo Sunset by Ray Davies, and I'm not sure why. I don't know, something about it, man. There's something so vulnerable and broken about the narrator in that song. And it's like there's a narrator and then there's a story that he's telling. So there's sort of this text and subtext, and he's talking about these other people, but he's also talking about himself. But there's also the larger context of, you know, Great Britain in the late 1960s, and he and his band had been prevented from, you know, cashing in on the British invasion in the United States. But so they were kind of trapped in England. And as a result, Ray Davies ended up, and I could be getting all this wrong, this is just what I've gathered from my research. Ray Davies ended up writing these songs that were like so quintessentially British feeling, you know, The Village Green. And this one, I remember hearing Waterloo Sunset performed at the base of Waterloo Bridge by Robin Hitchcock and Kimberly Rue. This little acoustic gig they were randomly doing when I was there. And it was one of the very first times I ever, you know, spent a day with the woman that I would go on to marry and have kids with. I'm in the house that we live in right now. But man, there's just something. Dirty old river, must you keep rolling, flowing into the night. So there's not just the Terry and Julie, the ostensible protagonists of our story. There's also the narrator of our story. But he starts off by singing to the river itself. I don't know. I think there's a lot going on. And then you look at the chord structure, which I'm not a musicologist or a music theory person to be able to really explain to you what's going on here. But I do know there's an E major, there's an E7, there's an E minor, there's an E minor 7. There's like just the fact that one song has all forms of your E chord. It's so good. Waterloo Sunset. Go check it out, kids. When I was in 4th grade, I came down with a mysterious inner ear infection type illness. It basically what it meant was that I couldn't walk without falling down, and I couldn't move around very much without getting nauseous to the point of vomiting multiple times a day. And so I got sent to, understandably, the hospital. And I was in the hospital for weeks, like 2.5 months. And there's a thing that happens when you're a kid in the hospital. Like, your parents are freaked out, obviously. And so in the beginning, they come, they're there, they sleep in a chair next to your bed. But then after a while, there's 2 other kids at home that they have to go take care of. There's jobs there's, real life. And you're this kid in the hospital not getting better. So after a while, they would just, understandably, again, they would go home, right? And so then I was a kid in a hospital just by myself for weeks. And it was weird, as you might imagine. There were two saving graces. One of them was the paperback books that they sold in the hospital gift shop downstairs. And every morning, someone would wheel my wheelchair down to the lobby of the hospital, and I'd pick out another book. Usually it would be a Stephen King novel. Terrifying stuff. I read all the Stephen King novels. Not as good, but I was willing to read them, were the Clive Cussler novels, the Flowers in the Attic series, a lot of horror fiction. The only time in my life I've been drawn to horror, anything, books or movies, was the time it was probably the worst idea for me to be consuming them, because hospitals are creepy, and fourth graders with, vivid imaginations, you're just asking for it. Anyway, my other saving grace, and in every way, a lot healthier, was my little record player that I had. And this is 1981, right? And so the little record player was one of those that had a lid that flipped up, and the vinyl was actually much bigger than the record player itself. So you'd flip the lid up, put the vinyl on, put the little arm on. There was built-in speakers that kind of sounded like crap. And I had a record that changed my life, which was Bad Reputation by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And man, so many things about that record. Her voice, like the way, and not even necessarily her singing voice, so I really loved that too. The level of commitment that she gave every time she screamed out her vocals. All those years in the Runaways in front of, drunken, wild audiences in Los Angeles. And here she was as this sort of underappreciated solo artist to begin with. Eventually there were hits. But on Bad Reputation, she was this kind of punk rock, glam rock hybrid. So her voice, like who she was as an artist, was so moving to me. Like I just felt like the level of unapologetic that went into the makeup of her persona. And I don't think it was a persona. I mean, I think that's who I've met Joan Jett since then, recently, in fact. And I just think that's who she is. But as someone, myself back then, who was feeling very guilty about being sick and putting my family through that, who's feeling very guilty just by my nature about a lot of things, this person who was wildly unapologetic, that was so beautiful to me. And it was something that inspired me to try and get over my own feelings of shame, guilt. And then there was the music, just the raw rock and roll of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And it was a great band. Roscoe Amble playing guitar on that record was, maybe every bit as important as Joan Jett in what it went into making that record just so kick-ass. And I just loved it. I've been doing gigs since I was 15 years old. And I don't know, I've probably averaged 150, 200 gigs a year. And I'll be 50 this year. So that's 35 years of performances. During that time, I've gotten to be on hundreds of bills featuring bands and artists that I love. I mean, Cheap Trick and X, and I've gotten to be on festivals where I get to go see, giant performers that blow my mind. There's concerts like I took my daughter and her friends last year to Madison Square Garden to see a Tyler the Creator concert. without being super familiar with his work, and was blown away. It was one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. It was like, even though it was just one dude on stage, it was basically like a punk rock concert, and it was incredibly moving. When I think about the gigs that I've gotten to do, I think about opening up for Willie Nelson at the Gorge. I think about my solo band, the Believers, performing right before the Pretenders at the Fuji Rock Festival at the base of Mount Fuji in Japan, in front of 500,000 people, and walking out on stage and just realizing that there were 500,000 people in front of that stage, like as far as the eye could see. And and then, of course, after I was finished watching the Pretenders kill it, playing at a festival, God, where were we? Missouri? Not long ago, 8 years ago now, when Little Richard played right after us, and getting to stand on the side of the stage and see this tiny little old man in a wheelchair. You get wheeled out on stage looking like he was about to perish, and then slide over onto the piano bench and become this otherworldly god of rock and roll, who seemed half the age of the man he had been in the wings of that performance. If I had to go to the concert, though, that sort of meant the most to me, I would probably go to the David Bowie Serious Moonlight Tour show 1983. Lisa Loeb of Stay fame, she took me. We were childhood friends. At the time, I was dating her little sister, Debbie. But Lisa took Debbie and I to Reunion Arena, where we sat on the side of the stage. And I was just a kid, what was I, 12, 13? And watched David Bowie kill it in front of 17,000 people in Reunion Arena. And then when it came time for him to do his encore, he exited the stage on a little staircase right in front of where our seats were. And I watched someone from his entourage put a towel around his neck and hand him a cocktail and hand him an already lit cigarette. And he stood there and he took a sip, took a drag off his cigarette, and he listened to 17,000 people chant his surname, Bowie, Bowie, Bowie. And he soaked it in, and he let that go on for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, longer than I would have felt comfortable. Like, if I had that many people yelling for me to do something, I would have just done it right away. But watching him do that, watching him elicit that response from that crowd, I remember thinking, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's a good job. I think I would like to do that job. And it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty similar what I've wound up doing. So thank you, David Bowie, wherever you are. That's Ziggy. My most embarrassing musical moment, I don't even really know. I mean, that question kind of comes up a lot, and I don't know if it's because I block out negative stuff. I've embarrassed myself. I don't know. I feel like I embarrass myself to some degree every single time I do freaking anything, especially on a stage. It's like it's part of the job. I remember doing all sorts of really ridiculous things that I shouldn't have done, that I should have been embarrassed about, but I don't remember feeling embarrassed about them. I remember doing things that were probably really great that I should have been proud of, that I ended up feeling embarrassed about? I don't know if I can answer this question. A memory pops into my head, a 4th of July show before the old 97's, probably 92. I was playing with my band Rhett's Exploding, which that right there is embarrassing, all right? I had a band called Rhett's Exploding. And we were doing a 4th of July gig, and I was so drunk. It was our second gig of the day, both of which had been outdoors in Dallas, which 4th of July in Dallas is just a cooker. And we were at the Rhythm Room in the evening. We'd been outdoors during the day, drank too much, went and did the evening gig, drank more, and then at some point during the show, by the way, I was wearing for this show jean shorts, ripped up jean shorts. This was 1992. Ripped up jean shorts, no shirt, an American flag tied around my neck and worn like a cape. Playing, I think, a white 6-string Rickenbacker, that's pronounced Rickenbacker. Playing, wasted. At some point, everything went black. And, which, by the way, if any kids are watching, I hope I'm not making this sound like glorified and great, because this was a disaster. Everything went black. I woke up a second later, and I was laying on the stage with my guitar kind of half underneath me. And there was a girl that I didn't know, and she was straddling me, and I guess we were making out. Now, all of this might actually sound pretty great. Like, you'd be like, okay, I'm in. I want to do that. That sounds great. It wasn't great. I felt pretty bad about myself at that moment. It was just like, okay, this is not good. Like, I dropped out of college and because I wanted to be an artist. Like, this doesn't feel like art. This just feels like self-destruction. I'm sure after I finish making this video, I'll remember something truly embarrassing. Because, like I said, the list of embarrassing things I've done could probably fill up a book. So maybe I should write that book. Howdy, y'all. This is Rhett Miller from the band Old 97's, and you're watching Magnet Television because you're cool.
Cine.